Well, it is India's largest airline, and it is an airline that has done remarkably well in the recent past. IndiGo has just announced its quarterly results. The numbers are fairly staggering. Revenue from operations is up at 29.8%. The load factor is at 88.6%. That's up from 79.6% last time around. Profit significantly for the airline is up at 236%. Now, these are just statistics, but the story of IndiGo as it continues to grow in this hyper-competitive market, which is the Indian civil aviation sector, is something which is truly remarkable. We've got a very special guest, the CEO of IndiGo, Mr. Pieter Elbers. Thanks very much, Mr. Elbers, for being with us. First question, is it pent-up demand that we are seeing, which has resulted in so many more passengers on your flights, or is this finally a return to normal, which obviously we didn't see during the COVID period?
Good evening. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And obviously, a happy and pleased CEO sitting in front of you. If we can announce these results. To your question, really, we see that the market actually is back, and not only this quarter. This is our third consecutive quarter. We are back into the black numbers, and the Indian market is probably one of the quickest markets in the world recovering post-COVID, and is now having numbers and posting numbers for the overall market, which is significantly higher than the situation prior to COVID. So I wouldn't call it pent-up demand. That may have been the case by the end of 22. I think today here we really see a combination of a Indian economy which is doing very, very well. Foreign investments in India, Indians going abroad, Indians going for study, family and friends, local business which is growing, and that all comes together in a very strong traffic demand. And basically at IndiGo, I think we're in a good position to benefit of that strong market and see the result of many of the actions and initiatives which we have taken over the past year.
Mr. Elbers, you know, when it comes to IndiGo, there are so many questions which so many of our viewers want to know. And so I thought we'd ask you fairly basic questions, get your answers in on them. So my first question is this: is Indian aviation essentially headed, in your opinion, for a duopoly type situation, IndiGo and an expanded Air India?
Well, Indian aviation is obviously going through a transition phase. And again, here, I think we should have a little bit more of a global view almost. And of course, we're here in India itself, and we look at it from an Indian perspective. But if you take a step back for a moment and you see that the most populous nation on the planet, in fact, should have airlines which are representing the size of that population and representing the size of that economy. And the consolidation which is now taking place partly under the Air India group, and of course the growth of IndiGo itself, is actually what we have seen in other parts in the world, where larger players emerge. And these larger players need to be large in order to compete, and in order to be able to compete with some of the mega carriers in the world. And the share, and sorry, I'm taking a bit of time for this answer, but the relative share of Indian carriers on international traffic is still relatively limited. And in order to regain some of that share, we need to grow, and we need to have a sizable presence. And there, the combination of a strong domestic network with a growing international network will help us to compete, and will make sure that the Indian carriers can regain some of that international share.
Has IndiGo benefited by the collapse of Go First? And I ask because you've got aircraft more readily available than perhaps any other airline, and at the same time you want to attract the talent which exists in that airline. In other words, pilots who operate the same aircraft, cabin crew, potentially engineers as well. So is this something which has come, you know, as a benefit to you at a time when you're trying to grow?
Well, overall, I would say the suspension of the flights of Go First, of course, created some sudden disruption in the market and sudden disruption of capacity. Having said that, IndiGo today operates almost 500 routes, a little over 400 domestic and some 80 to 90 international. If we look to that domestic network, the overlap, if you look at Go First, what percentage of our domestic routes were also operated by Go First, it's below 20%. So when it comes to that market, I think IndiGo by now is covering so many routes that we basically continue to build on that strong market position. When it comes to the labor markets, again here, India, very different than some other parts of the world, is really in a position where there's still a lot of potential out in the market and a lot of actually new people joining the labor market and youngsters looking for jobs. And we have a fantastic training institute at IndiGo. We train about 2,000 people a day for the growth of our airline. So yes, we have seen some moves from Go First, but I would say the core of what we're doing at IndiGo is still provided by our internal training program and our internal training center.
Would you have a number of people who have come in from Go First?
No, I would not be able to have a precise number. There's always fluctuations in the market, so I would not be able to have a precise number. But again, we are expecting to hire in the range of 5,000 people this year. So look at the size of what we are doing. We train 2,000 a day for different programs. So again here, the Go First people joining, that I wouldn't have a precise number, but if we look to the total scale of growth we're growing, it's the majority of our growth is coming from outside anyway.
There have been recent concerns, Mr. Elbers, on security and safety, and that obviously is your primary concern as an airline. You've been fined recently. A couple of your pilots have had suspensions as well, tail strikes, I think 4 in 6 months. Should passengers be concerned? A basic question.
Well, let me reiterate where you started with. Safety is our key priority. Number 1, number 2, and number 3 on our priority is, and will continue to be safety. And IndiGo has actually a very strong track record when it comes to safety. Then we had the 4 tail strikes over this past 6 months. These tail strikes are to be reported, and we're fully transparent on that part. So there's no hiding. These are being reported, and are also being investigated. And based on these investigations, we take appropriate measures or corrective measures or adjust our procedures, which is a continuous process in improving our safety. We have recently indeed received a writing from the DGCA. We of course take that very serious, and today we're in the process of evaluating the precise note we received from the DGCA, and then we'll determine what is our next step on that. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, we continuously review our procedures, our safety. I mean, we have grown to an airline with 1,800 flights a day. That's, looking at the global size, that is something like the 7th or the 8th largest in the world when it comes to daily departures. So we have a massive operation, and we continuously evaluate how we can keep that operation to the highest safety standards, which IndiGo actually is known for all these years.
There's a report which came out a few days back in the Hindu which said that there was pressure on pilots to ensure maximum fuel efficiency, which is possibly why the aircraft are not ideally configured in their flap setting when they make a landing, pilots possibly coming in to save fuel. How would you respond to that?
Well, let me be clear. At the end of the day, always the pilots have the call on what landing configuration they use. And it's at the pilots eventually, it's a pilot's discretion to use the landing configuration and to configure for that. Then, of course, we have internal procedures which are matching to what the industry standards are, which are allowing different variations of operational procedures. And in those operational procedures, we've taken into consideration all possible elements. But at the end of the day, again here, it is the pilot who is deciding what is the precise configuration for landing. And we use the different configurations which are allowed by the aircraft manufacturers.
Do you agree with the DGCA fine and the action they have taken, or do you believe it's something that you might challenge?
Again, we are reviewing today what exactly is being said. I don't think we should go in the public in sort of commenting what the DGCA said. We're reviewing that now, and based on that, we'll engage with DGCA as per the process, there's a process laid out when you receive such a notice, what you can do, what is the time frame for that, what's the appropriate steps. And I think an airline of our size and our skills should just follow the steps which are pre-described by the DGCA, and we do that as such.
Mr. Elbers, let's talk about the future, because it's exciting for IndiGo, isn't it? And I must ask you this, is IndiGo looking to acquire twin-aisle long-range jetliners? I'm not talking about the short-term acquisition of 777s. I'm talking about, are we going to see, who knows, A350s or Dreamliners? That was a rumor, in IndiGo colors, twin-aisle aircraft in the future.
Yeah. Well, the good news is there's rumors every day. But to your earlier question, I mean, yes, the future is exciting. India today, I would dare to say, with a lot of confidence, actually, is the most vibrant aviation market in the world. Being at the IATA conference in Istanbul 2 months back, all eyes were at India. If you just look at the air show, which recently took place in Paris, there was, of course, the earlier order of Air India, and then IndiGo was in a position to order another 500 narrow-body aircraft, Airbus 320 family, which is the highest number ever ordered as a single aircraft type of any airline by Airbus. And again, I think that speaks to the potential of India and speaks to the potential of IndiGo. If we look to the geographical position of India, we are very well positioned, not only for the Indian market itself, but also for international travel. And as such, we're expanding very significantly international. Over the next few weeks, we're adding another 6 international destinations. 2 days from now, we start flying Mumbai to Nairobi. It's the first time actually IndiGo will be touching on African soil. So look at that from a network perspective. 2 days later, we start our flight to Jakarta. 2 days later, we start our flights into Central Asia from Delhi. Mm-hmm. So we're actually actively building up that network. Then we have Airbus 321 XLR on order as well. They will be coming end of 24, maybe early 25. That will be the next step. They will bring us further into Europe and will bring us also further into Asia. We've kept always all options open for after that. I would like to sort of stick to that position today. We have a firm planning and agenda for our 321 family, for our XLRs, and whatever it comes next, we have not ruled out anything, and we keep all options open towards the future.
In fact, the XLR was my next question. There have been range issues with the A321 XLR. Is IndiGo worried about, the orders that you've placed or the faith that you've placed on this variant? Because, for example, Delhi to London direct, on the basis of the reconfiguration or the redesign of the additional fuel tank, some would suggest might be a problem.
Yeah, I've read the very same reports as you're referring to, and of course we're in close contact and communication with Airbus on what's going to be the precise configuration and what's going to be the precise range. And of course, we've looked at these aircraft and we've taken a position for these aircraft based on a certain range. I think it would be a bit premature today to precisely say which routes could be operated and could not be operated. That really depends on Airbus. It also depends actually on our configuration, what's going to be the precise number of seats, what's the routing take place. Having said that, I think there's a lot of routes, even in today's network. Let me come back to the earlier example. We start now flying Mumbai into Nairobi. Mm-hmm. We cannot fly with today's aircraft Delhi into Nairobi. We could fly with the Airbus 321 XLR Delhi Nairobi. So if we park the whole London story for a moment, I think there's still a lot of opportunities in the range of 6 to 7 to 8 hours, which, irrespective of the precise outcome you're referring to, would offer great new opportunities for us to fly out of Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Bangalore. All these great Indian cities will have a lot of potential for us to further build our network. I mean, take Singapore. We fly out of 7 different cities in India to Singapore. So we could even stretch that further into Indonesia. We start flying now from Mumbai into Jakarta. With the XLR, Delhi, Jakarta could be another option. So we start adding and building on that network international.
But you would agree, Mr. Elbers, that West Europe would be a problem given what we're hearing about the XLR?
I think that's really too early to say that. Mm-hmm. If I were to comment on every speculation in the media, what's going to be the precise range of an aircraft, that would pretty much consume half of my day. So I really prefer to await the definitive outcome of Airbus, get the information from the manufacturer, then run our systems and the exact configuration of our aircraft, and then decide what's going to be the precise range of these aircraft.
A broader question, and I ask because with 1,000 odd aircraft on order, one needs to know this. Does India have the infrastructure to support IndiGo's growth?
Well, yeah, that's a very fair question. But I think with this order, and here, I'm actually very pleased what's happening. We have now the new airport in Noida coming up. We'll have the new airport in Navi Mumbai coming up. Existing airports are expanding. Take Goa as an example. The new airport in Goa opened, Goa Mopa Airport, in Jan of this year. I had the privilege of being at the inaugural, and there were quite some concerns. What will happen with the existing airport, and will it reduce, and will it keep the flights, and what does it mean for the local economy, and so on and so forth. The reality is actually that we kept operating pretty much all our existing flights at the existing airport of Goa, and we have added dozens and dozens of flights to the new one. So the investments in infrastructure are now really taking off in India. And rather than looking to each other, airports to airlines and airlines to airports, we have now a firm order book, and not only us, but also Air India. So Indian airlines are having now a firm order book, which should give the airports enough confidence to start building and expanding the airports. And I guess in the past there may have been a little sort of chicken and egg. Are there enough planes, or is there enough airport capacity? Today it's clear the airlines are embarking on a path of growth, and with that the airports can start helping to create the infrastructure there. And from that angle, actually, I'm very pleased also with all the efforts the government is putting in. And if you take a global perspective, the agenda of the government to move India further onto the global stage, and to I would say its rightful place, and the hosting of the G20 and all the policies attached to that. Many states are reducing their ATF taxes, aligning them. So all these policy changes of the government, the push for the government to open up new airports, the UDAN scheme, that's all helping really to push, I would say, a common agenda forward. And IndiGo can only be happy and proud and humble to be part of that agenda and help to implement and bring the country forward.
Mr. Elbers, two questions as we wrap up this discussion. A very passenger-centric sort of question, and I think I'm asking this myself. Will we ever see in-flight entertainment systems on IndiGo aircraft?
Again, my standard response to pretty much everything is we're not ruling out anything. Again, IndiGo has evolved over time. If you take, for example, when we started this week, we celebrate our 17th anniversary. Think about that. 17 years ago, we had one flight starting, and today we operate 500 routes, 1,800 flights a day, and we welcome this quarter a record of 26 million customers in a quarter. And as recent as May, we had a record of 3 lakh customers a day. So we evolve over time. And with that evolving, we are further upgrading our loyalty program, for example. That's a customer question. We have one today, which is linked to a credit card. We're further developing and evolving that. So I'm not ruling out anything. With that, maybe just a quick reaction. If I see the number of customers on a plane, especially in a digital savvy country as India, who is all having their own phones, some of them even 2, it is actually more likely to develop in that range for domestic flights rather than anything else.
And a final question. 500 aircraft on order. You are the key person involved in all of this. Negotiations must have gone on for months. Were you tense? Were you nervous? Were you worried? My God, we are committing so much. What if the market doesn't really develop? What if aviation turbine fuel goes out of control? Could you share with us some stories that you've not said anywhere else about, the negotiations themselves? I mean, it would have taken a toll on you.
Yeah, well, the good part, and thanks for that more personal angle to the talk. I really appreciate that. The good part here is that at IndiGo, and I'm 1 year here now, but at IndiGo we have a fantastic team and colleagues working on that. So none of steps like this is a sort of single person operation. There's a vision from the promoter. There's a board which is supporting it, and they're wonderful and very strong and experienced colleagues doing that. So as a team, you embark on such a negotiation, and as every negotiation, you have ups and downs and moments of frustration and moments of happiness. What I can share, when I was sitting in Paris with the IndiGo team and together with the Airbus leadership, and basically presenting there an order of 500, I could only feel extremely proud of what we are doing, and the fact that even in the recent visit of the Honorable Prime Minister into Paris and the guest of honor, it just demonstrated and underlined the position of India on that stage. And to be part of that growth story together with all my colleagues at IndiGo, it's an humbling and yet very energizing experience.
Mr. Elbers, congratulations. Fantastic quarterly results. And, IndiGo and India's plans for the future in aviation, they seem so closely tied. Thank you very much for speaking to us.